Almost 200 more police officers have been deployed to Cape Town's crime hotspots. The murder rate on the Cape Flats has escalated alarmingly. The territory wars to control drugs are believed to be behind the killings. Sadly, many bystanders, especially children, have been caught in the crossfire. RONALD MASINDA is joining us from, it looks like we have lost our reporter, RONALD MASINDA, but we will be trying to get a hold of him. RONALD, do we have you there?
Yes, loud and clear, Morena. Well, thank you for your time. Well, Morena, earlier this morning we visited several people and we spoke to a reformed gang member who gave us basically the ins and outs of life within a gang. He said that, you know, his involvement in a gang, which we won't mention at this stage where he joined the gang, his involvement, he was basically lured to join the gang because he had a drug problem, and that became an issue where he was exploited by that gang to do the deeds that the gang wanted him to do. One of them was car hijacking. They also used him as an enforcer to hit other people who oppose his gang. And he spent several years in prison. But what we are getting from the streets, Morena, when we visited streets on the Cape Flats earlier, is that a lot of the people who are recruited in gangs either want to join gangs themselves willingly to earn an income, to feel that they are protected, and also to be empowered. Many of them are from broken families, meaning that they are without fathers, and they feel a sense of brotherhood when they join gangs. But sadly, many of these young men are also recruited by gangs, as gangs want to be large in numbers. There's around 130 gangs on the Cape Flats today, which is an alarming figure. And every night we are hearing of harrowing stories of shootings. Now, we also spoke to Fadil Adams, an activist and a former gang member himself, saying that, you know, a government also needs to play its part, because after 27 years into the democracy, nothing much has changed on the Cape Flats. This is what he had to say earlier.
27 years later, we still haven't reached the point where we realize that you can throw all the resources in the world at gang violence and it's not going to do anything, and it's just targeted. And this is not targeted. Throwing 197 more police officers into the Western Cape, well, we applaud it, but it's not going to do anything. They're not sending the proper army out here. We need that army of doctors, of social workers, of skills developers. I mean, this community is traumatized. Policing in its current form is not doing anything for us, because the root of this evil is not being addressed. The root of this evil is inequality. It's poverty. It's homelessness. I don't understand. You know, the three biggest problems we have in this province is A, our police minister, Becky Cele; 2, our MEC for Safety and Security, Albert Fritz; 3, our MACO member for Safety and Security, JP Smith. 3 people, 3 political appointees, all of them out of their depth. No one knowing what to do next.
So Mr. Adams has seemingly offered some suggestions as to how the problem can be fixed. What are the solutions that are being put forward?
Well, at this stage, Morena, there seems to be the solution that Peggy Kele, having 197 police officers, and also Albert Fritz announcing last month that there will be more law enforcement to assist SAPS. So that seems to be a step in the right direction. But what we do know is that Peggy Kele has said in the past that perhaps the army's redeployment on the Cape Flats will also do the trick, because there seems to be a variety of violent crimes, and not only crimes committed by gang-on-gang violence, but also we've also seen quite a number of robberies in Langa this past week alone. We also saw the death of 2 security officers whose pistols were taken away from them, and also a fidelity guard being bombed, the vehicle of a fidelity guard in Guguletu, where 1 security officer died and several were left injured. So there seems to be quite a number of crimes, and it's a variety of crimes that are a cause for concern. As you know, the Western Cape, or Cape Town, is ranked as one of the highest murder rates in the world, and since the lockdown, the easing of the lockdown, we've seen quite an escalation of these violent crimes. And the issue of gangs goes beyond the 27 years that Fadil Adams has mentioned. Where we are not too far from here, the old District 6, we've also been hearing of stories in the past where gangs at the time were not so active in terms of extortion and being involved in drugs and such crimes, but people who are still involved in gangs, which seems to be the gangsterism in the West Cape seems to be very deeply rooted, and there seems to be quite a large a culture of gangs. We also been hearing from ELDRED, the KLERK, who is the policing expert, saying that, you know, one of the other issues is that jails, people who are in jail, also play an active part in sending messages to gangs in order to execute some of the things that they want to see as gang leaders within the jail system. This is what you have to say further.
Well, the solution is not an easy one, and yet they are a long-term one, and we have to do the medium to long-term things. Take care of people's vulnerabilities and needs, because it's those vulnerabilities and needs that gangs continue to exploit. You've covered enough stories to know that any time a so-called gang leader gets laid to rest, the communities lament the fact that he won't be there to pay for their child's funeral, pay their rent, lend them money, provide them with food. Yet isn't that something that the state needs to do? And when I say the state, I'm talking local government, provincial government, and national government. The deploying of more police in and of itself creates an opportunity for those organs of state to join forces, to be able to go into the space that's been created, the relatively safe space that's been created by the deployment of more police, to have real and authentic conversations to determine the needs of that community. Who's the aged? What are the average age of kids? Which household is going to bed without food at night? And then being able to mobilize both state and private sector resources to respond to those needs. Because without addressing the quality of life, the developmental, health, educational, and shelter of communities, gangs will continue to exploit that vulnerability and to continue to perpetuate themselves.
Bullying in schools, or rather, let me come here and say thank you very much, Ronald, before we get to our next story. That's where we're going to be leaving it with our reporter, Ronald MASINDA. Now, let's